was a night that history forgot to record, not the morning after. That morning, history recorded with meticulous, even obsessive care, writing it down from every angle, preserving every detail, ensuring that every future generation would know exactly what happened when Abraham Lincoln walked into Ford's Theater on the evening of April 14th, 1865. That part history kept. But the night before, the quiet, ordinary, extraordinary night before, the night when a city moved through its hours without knowing what the morning would bring, when a man who had carried the weight of 4 years of the most devastating war in American history sat in the particular silence of a private darkness and did not know that he was hours away from the last sleep he would ever wake from. That night, history allowed to become invisible, and invisible things, it turns out, are exactly where the most important truths live. Tonight, I am taking you inside that night. Tonight, you are going to walk the gaslit streets of Washington, D.C. on the evening of April 14th, 1865, and you are going to breathe its air and hear its voices and feel the specific quality of a city that is caught between an ending and a beginning, between the exhaustion of 4 years of war that is finally, mercifully drawing to its close, and the enormous, uncertain, barely imaginable work of what comes after. You are going to feel what it felt like to be inside that night before the morning arrived and changed everything. And I promise you, stay with me through this, because the part that will matter most to you is not the part you expect. It is not the grand historical moment. It is the small and human and irreplaceable part. The part that lives in the texture of a single city on a single night before a single dawn. I promise you that by the time this story reaches its quiet end, something in you will have settled that needed settling, and sleep will have come for you the way it comes when a story has done its work completely. But before we go anywhere, before I take you back 160 years to a city that exists now only in photographs and records and the careful preservation of people who understood that what was lost there was worth keeping, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it, not just in your head, but in the comments, in the space below this story where the community gathers. Where in the world are you right now as you listen to this? Are you in a city that hums and buzzes outside your window? A modern city with its modern sounds, its traffic and its distant music and the particular electrical hum of a world that runs on invisible currents? Are you somewhere quieter, somewhere where the night actually gets dark and actually gets silent in the way that nights in cities never quite do? Are you in the same country where this story is set, lying in the soil of a nation that still carries, in its oldest and deepest places, the memory of everything that happened in the years this story is drawn from? Or are you somewhere across an ocean, coming to this story from a completely different world? A world that has its own history and its own weight and its own collection of nights it has not quite finished processing? Wherever you are, tell me. Because one of the things I love most about this community is the geography of it, the way we come from every direction and every time zone and every kind of life and arrive together in the same quiet place. So drop your city, your country, your time zone in the comments. Tell me it is 3 a.m. and sleep has been avoiding you for hours. Tell me whatever is true. And then close your eyes and come with me to Washington. Take a breath first. A real one. Not the automatic shallow breath that the body manages on its own without asking for your participation, but a deliberate, generous, full breath that you are choosing to take, that you are giving yourself as the first act of this night together. In through your nose, slowly, filling the bottom of your lungs first, the way a glass fills from the bottom up, and then the middle, and then the top. A complete and unhurried breath that treats the air as something worth receiving carefully, as something that deserves your full attention. And then out through your mouth, completely, not pushing, not forcing, just opening and allowing, releasing what the breath took in, and leaving you at the end of it, slightly lighter than you were before. One more time, because one is never quite enough, because the second breath always goes deeper than the first, always reaches the places the first breath only approaches. In, slowly, fully, generously, and out, completely, easily, without any effort at all. Good. Now let your body settle. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw release whatever it has been holding. And it has been holding something the jaw almost always is, carrying the day's unfinished business in the tension of the muscles that move speech, the muscles that have been working all day to form words and now finally can rest. Let them rest. Let everything rest. And let me take you back. April 14th, 1865. The night is warm for April in Washington. Warmer than the city's residents expected. Warm enough that doors and windows that might otherwise be closed against the chill have been left open, letting the city's nighttime air move through rooms and corridors and across faces that have been carrying a very particular kind of tension for a very long time and are only now gradually beginning to release it. The Civil War is nearly over. Robert E. Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to Ulysses Grant 5 days ago at Appomattox Courthouse. And while the formal end of the war will not come for weeks yet, everyone in Washington knows what Appomattox means. Everyone in this city, on this night, is living inside the strange, fragile, exhausted feeling of a thing that is almost finished, of a weight that has been carried so long that the body has organized itself around the carrying and is not yet sure what it will be when the weight is finally, truly gone. You open your eyes and you are here in this night, in this city, and the first thing you feel is the air. And the air is something you are not prepared for. It is warm and it carries things. The smell of a horse and street dust, and the particular organic smell of a city that has been through something enormous and is only now, tentatively, beginning to breathe again. It carries the smell of the Potomac somewhere in the distance, that river smell that is different from the smell of the sea, less salt and more earth, the smell of fresh water moving through a landscape that has been absorbing the consequences of 4 years of catastrophic war and is still in the process of deciding what those consequences mean for the soil and the water and the long, slow cycles of the natural world that continue, regardless of what human beings do to each other. You breathe it in, and something in you that has been tight loosens very slightly, not enough to notice in a deliberate way, but enough that your body registers it, enough that the next breath comes a little easier than the one before. The street you find yourself standing in is lit by gas lamps, not the bright, consistent, reliable electric light that the future will bring, but the softer, more variable, more alive light of gas flames burning in glass, and iron lanterns mounted on tall poles at intervals along the street. Each lamp makes its own small world of warm light, a circle of amber that reaches perhaps 20 feet before giving way to the dark between lamps. And you move through these worlds of light and dark in the way that you move through all things that alternate between visible and invisible, with a slightly heightened attention in the dark stretches, and a slight relaxation as the next lamp's circle reaches out and receives you. The lamps breathe slightly, their flames not entirely steady, moving with each shift of the evening air in a way that makes the shadows on the street and on the building facades shift and settle and shift again in a continuous, slow-motion conversation between light and dark. You watch this for a moment and feel something in it that you cannot quite name, something about the way things look when the light they are seen by is itself alive and variable and honest, something about the specific beauty of a flame-lit world that electric light, for all its efficiency and reliability, does not quite reproduce. You begin to walk, and as you walk, Washington begins to reveal itself to you. This is not the Washington of monuments and marble that a later century will build to commemorate what this era accomplished and what it cost. This Washington is a city still in the process of becoming itself, a city that in 1865 is simultaneously the capital of the most powerful government in North America, and a city with unpaved streets in many of its districts, a city where pigs are sometimes found, wandering the thoroughfares, and where the smell of the open drainage channels that serve in place of a modern sewer system is a constant and unpleasant companion in the warmer months. A city that has been swollen to several times its pre-war size by the arrival of soldiers and contractors and government workers and freed enslaved people and journalists and profiteers and idealists and the simply desperate, all of them drawn to the center of the national crisis, and all of them now, on this warm April night, trying to figure out what comes next. The streets are not empty. This is something that surprises you at first. You expected quiet, and quiet is there. But it is not the quiet of absence. It is the quiet of presence held in check, of a city that is awake and moving, but moving with an unusual gentleness, an unusual thoughtfulness, as if the general population has collectively decided, without discussing it or planning it, that tonight is not a night for noise. People move through the gaslit streets at a pace that is slower than ordinary, pausing at corners to exchange a few words, standing in doorways to watch the evening go by, sitting on the stoops of the brick row houses that line many of the city's residential streets, with a particular posture of people who have come outside, not to go anywhere, but simply to be outside, to be in the air, to feel the warmth of an April night after a winter that felt, this year especially, like it was testing the endurance of everyone required to live through it. You pass a group of 3 men standing in the amber circle of a gas lamp, and their conversation comes to you in pieces as you approach and then pass. They are men of middle age, men whose faces carry the specific marks of the war years. Not the marks of combat, not the marks of men who have been in the fighting, but the marks of men who have been close to it, who have been managing it from a distance, who have been receiving its reports and making its decisions and living with its consequences from behind the relative safety of desks and offices and the machinery of administration. Their faces are tired in a way that goes past the ordinary tired of an ordinary day, the specific, deep-woven tired of people who have been doing something hard for a very long time and are only now, with the end in sight, allowing themselves to feel how tired they actually are. One of them says, and his voice is the voice of a man who has been having the same conversation in slightly different forms for days now. The question is what we do with a peace. We know how to fight a war. God knows we have learned that. But peace is harder. Peace requires something different from us, something we have not yet had to practice. The man beside him, shorter, with the look of someone who has spent his years in rooms full of paper and argument. It will require everything, I suspect. More than the war did, in its way. The war had a clear purpose, a clear enemy. Peace is going to require us to look at each other and see something other than enemies. And I am not certain we know how to do that yet. The third man says nothing. He is looking up at the dark sky above the gaslit street, and his expression is the expression of someone who is thinking something they are not yet ready to put into words, something that is still forming in them, still working its way up from whatever depth. Thoughts rise from before they arrive as language. You pass them and their voices fade behind you, but the shape of what they were saying stays with you, moves along with you through the lamplight and the dark as you continue down the street. The question is what we do with the peace. You feel the weight of that question in the air of the entire city tonight. It is underneath everything, underneath the relief and the exhaustion and the cautious, fragile sense that something terrible is drawing to its close. The question of what comes after, the question of what kind of nation emerges from the rubble of 4 years of fighting between Americans, the question that one man in particular has been turning over in his mind with more care and more weight and more personal cost than anyone else in this city, in this country, in this particular moment of history. You feel a pull toward the center of the city, not a dramatic pull, not an insistent or anxious one, more the quiet gravitational pull that large things exert on the smaller things in their vicinity, the way a river pulls the landscape around it toward itself without effort or intention, simply as a consequence of being what it is. You follow this pull and let it guide your steps, and the streets become slightly wider, and the buildings slightly larger, and the gas lamps slightly more frequent as you move toward the places where the city's power is concentrated, where its decisions are made, where its future is being argued over and planned for in the late-night offices of the people who believe they are steering history. Something about this city tonight resists easy description. It is not festive. The celebrations that followed the news of Lee's surrender have largely subsided, replaced by this more complex, more adult emotion that the city is sitting with now. This compound of relief and grief and uncertainty and the specific sobriety that comes to people who have won something at enormous cost and are only now beginning to calculate what the cost actually was. And the cost was enormous. More than 600,000 dead, hundreds of thousands more permanently maimed, entire regions of the country physically destroyed, their infrastructure burned or dismantled, their economy shattered, their social structures overturned in ways whose full consequences are not yet visible. And on the other side of all of that cost, on the other side of the greatest national catastrophe in American history, a question that is larger and harder and more morally serious than any the country has ever faced. What does this nation become now that the question of enslavement has been resolved in blood? What does it owe to the 4 million people who have been freed? What does freedom actually mean when the people who have just been freed have nothing? No land, no money, no legal protection, no political power, no education, and are surrounded by people who resent their freedom and intend to contest it at every opportunity? These are the questions living in the air of Washington on this warm April night. And they are not small questions, and they do not have easy answers. And the man who has been wrestling with them longer and more seriously than anyone else in the country is somewhere in this city tonight, in a building whose windows you can see from here, glowing with the soft light of candles and oil lamps, its white painted exterior absorbing the darkness around it and throwing it back slightly illuminated, slightly warmer, slightly more present than darkness ought to be. You stop walking. You are standing on the grass of the broad grounds that surround the executive mansion, what a later century will call the White House, and you are looking at it across the distance of perhaps 100 yards. And what you see from here is not what you would expect from a building that houses the most powerful office in the nation. It is smaller than you imagined, or rather, it is the right size. Not small, not modest, certainly a substantial building by any ordinary measure, but not monumental, not overwhelming, not the kind of building that announces its own importance in the way that the great government buildings of Europe announce themselves, with their proportions designed specifically to make the individual human being feel insignificant by comparison. The executive mansion is designed to be a house, a large and formal house, but a house, a place where a person lives, where a family has their meals and their arguments and their ordinary private life, a place where human beings go to bed at night and wake up in the morning and feel, in whatever moments the relentless demands of the position allow, something like ordinary, something like themselves. The lights in the upper windows are the lights that matter most to you right now, not the formal rooms on the lower floors, where the business of government happens in the public hours. Those rooms are largely dark now, the day's official work done. The lights in the upper windows are the private lights, the lights of rooms where a person exists when they are not performing the role of president, when they are simply a human being in a house at night, sitting with whatever thoughts the day has left them, keeping whatever private company the night provides. You stand on the grass and you look at those lights, and something in you, something that recognizes across all the distance of time and circumstance what it is to be a person, carrying more than a person should have to carry, sitting in a room at night with the enormous weight of a nation's suffering arranged around them like furniture. Something in you reaches toward those windows without being asked to, without any decision involved, simply as an act of the heart toward another heart that has been spending itself on behalf of people it has never met in a cause that cost it more than it was prepared to pay. The night air moves across the grounds, a soft April wind that carries the smell of the Potomac and the smell of the city and the smell of grass that is growing again after the winter. The specific alive smell of a spring that is arriving despite everything, that does not know about the war and does not care about the peace. That is simply doing what spring does, returning to a world that has been waiting for it, pushing green things up through the dark earth with the patient, unstoppable insistence of life, continuing to insist on itself, regardless of what human beings are doing in its vicinity. You breathe this air in and let it fill you, and you feel, standing here in the grass, outside the white-painted house with its candlelit windows, something that is the emotional equivalent of that spring, something returning in you, something that has been waiting, something that the long walk through this gaslit city has been quietly preparing you for, without your knowing it. A softening, a beginning of release. Not yet sleep, not yet, but the approach of it, the distant awareness of its possibility, the body beginning to understand that the night is moving in the direction of rest, and that the rest will come. Stay here for a moment. Do not rush away from this view, from this specific combination of the warm night air and the soft lights in the upper windows, and the grass beneath your feet, and the enormous, quiet sky above you with its April stars. Stay in it. The city is breathing around you. The gas lamps at the street's edge are breathing their small, alive flames. And somewhere inside those warm-lit windows, a man who is aged 20 years and 4 is sitting with whatever the night has brought him, thinking the thoughts that only come in the private hours, feeling the things that public life does not permit feeling in public, being as much of himself as the relentless weight of history allows him to be in the moments when history is not actively requiring something of him. What do you think he feels tonight, standing at the end of this week, standing 5 days past Appomattox, standing on the threshold between the war that defined his presidency and the peace that will require everything that the war required and more? What do you think moves through a person who has presided over the deaths of more than 600,000 of his countrymen, who has signed the orders and written the letters and received the dispatches and looked at the photographs and visited the hospitals and spoken the words at the ceremonies and carried all of it, for 4 years without the option of setting it down, without the option of stepping back, without the option that every ordinary person has of simply deciding that something is too heavy and walking away from it? What does that person feel on the night when the wait begins, finally and imperfectly and incompletely, to lift? You stand in the grass and you hold that question, and you do not try to answer it, because some questions are not for answering. Some questions are for holding, for sitting with, for carrying through the night as companions rather than problems. This is one of them. Hold it gently and walk on. You turn away from the White House and its warm lights and continue through the streets, and the city continues to offer itself to you in its nighttime version. Not the official city, not the city of power and politics and the machinery of governance, but the city of people living their lives in the middle of history without quite knowing. That is what they are doing. This is always the true city. This has always been the truest city of any place in any time. Not the monuments and the official buildings and the formal spaces where power performs itself, but the streets behind them, the residential blocks and the small businesses and the corner conversations and the families behind the lit windows, the ordinary human texture of a place that happens to be, at this particular moment, the center of something enormous. A woman is sweeping her front step. It is late for sweeping, later than sweeping is usually done, but she is there with her broom, moving slowly across the brick of her stoop with the meditative, automatic rhythm of someone who has chosen a physical task because physical tasks require just enough of the attention to keep the mind from running in circles, but not so much that they prevent the mind from going where it needs to go. She sweeps with a patience that is different from the patience of someone who is simply being patient. It is the patience of someone who has decided that patience is all that is available to her right now, and has made her peace with that, has accepted the limited options of the present moment, and is living inside them without complaint. You slow as you pass her, and something in her sweeping, in the quiet and continuous and purposeful movement of it, reaches into you and touches something that is itself in need of a repetitive, quiet, purposeful motion, the motion of breath, the motion of a story moving forward, the motion of time, doing what time does, steadily and without interruption, carrying everything along with it, whether everything consents or not. She looks up as you pass, and her eyes meet yours for a moment. And in that moment, something passes between you that is too brief and too simple to be called communication, but is too real and too specific to be called nothing. She nods. A small nod, the kind that says, I see you and you are all right, and the night is all right, and whatever you are carrying, you do not have to carry alone in this city on this night, because everyone here is carrying something, and we all know it even when we do not say it. You nod back, and you walk on. The war has changed this city in ways that will take years to fully understand, and decades to fully reckon with. Before the war, Washington was a small city, a government town without the commercial and industrial character of the great northeastern cities, a place that existed almost entirely in relationship to the government it housed, sprawling and somewhat unfinished looking and not yet certain of its own identity. The war swelled it. Soldiers poured through it on their way to the fronts in Virginia, filling its streets and its hotels and its boarding houses and eventually its hospitals. Those terrible hospitals that occupied the government buildings and the churches and eventually the open lawns around the Capitol itself. Row upon row of men in various stages of what the war had done to them, lying in the open air in the summer and under hastily erected canvas in the winter, tended by nurses who had come from everywhere to do something useful in a crisis that seemed to demand usefulness from everyone who had it to offer. The city has lived with the smell of those hospitals for 4 years. It has lived with the sound of the wagons carrying the dead to the burial grounds. It has lived with the sight of men on crutches, and men with empty sleeves, and men whose faces carry the particular blankness of people who have seen something that the mind has decided not to process all at once because processing it all at once would be too much. Tonight, the hospitals are quieter than they have been in years. The immediate crisis of the war's worst fighting is past. The streams of wounded that used to arrive after every major engagement, having slowed to a trickle as the armies wind down toward their final positions. The men who are still in the wards are the ones who have been there a long time, the ones whose wounds are healing slowly or not healing at all, the ones who have been left behind by the war's momentum and who lie in their narrow beds in the gaslit wards and listen to the city outside and know, most of them, that the war is almost over and that the almost overness of it is both a mercy and a complicated thing, because it means that what they suffered meant something, but it also means that what they suffered is simply over, and now the world has to figure out what to do next. And figuring out what to do next is its own kind of suffering. You walk past the darkened facade of one of the city's many churches and hear from inside the sound of a single voice speaking in the measured cadence of private prayer. Not a service. There is no congregation here this hour, no hymns, no responsive reading. Just one voice, speaking steadily into the empty church with the specific quality of someone who has come here, not because the ritual requires it, but because they needed somewhere quiet with walls and a ceiling, and the accumulated sense of things said here over many years, the invisible weight of all the prayers that have already been offered in this space, settling into the air and giving it a quality of being heard that is different from the quality of ordinary air. The voice speaks, and the stone walls hold the sound, and you stand outside on the street and listen for a moment to the sound of someone talking to whatever they talk to in the most private, most honest moments of their lives. And you feel, listening, the absolute universality of that impulse, the need to speak when things are very large and very uncertain, towards something that does not require you to be coherent or composed or certain of what you believe. Something that simply receives what you are capable of offering and does not grade it. The voice from inside the church fades as you continue walking. The gas lamps carry you forward through their alternating light and dark, and the city continues its nighttime life around you, and you feel yourself moving deeper into the night in a way that is both literal. You have been walking for a while now. The streets have changed around you. The character of the city has shifted, as you have moved through it, and metaphorical in the sense that the night is doing its work on you, the long and patient and reliable work that night does on every person who gives it enough time and enough attention. It is loosening things. It is moving through you the way a slow river moves through stone, not with force, not with the drama of a torrent, but with the patient, persistent, entirely effective power of something that has all the time in the world and knows it. The night is loosening things in you, important things, things that the day holds tight, and that only the dark and the time inside the dark and the quiet quality of paying attention to a story in the dark can gently and finally release. Let yourself feel that loosening. Do not resist it. Do not manage it or try to understand it or identify specifically what it is that is being loosened, because that kind of attention is the attention of the day, the analyzing and categorizing and labeling attention. And right now you are in the night's kind of attention, which is softer and more peripheral and more willing to receive without requiring immediate comprehension. Just feel it, the loosening, the slight pleasant heaviness in your limbs, the way your breathing has slowed without your having decided to slow it, the body making that adjustment quietly on its own, because the body always knows more about what it needs than the mind does, and is always, given the slightest encouragement, willing to move toward rest. There's a sound ahead of you that you identify before you can see its source. The sound of a piano, played with a specific quality of someone playing for themselves rather than for an audience. Not practiced, not performed, not the careful execution of a piece that has been learned and is being demonstrated, but the loose, exploratory, half-improvised sound of someone at a keyboard in the private hours, finding music rather than executing it, following something that is coming from inside rather than reading something from a page. The sound comes from a house on a residential block, and it comes from an upper floor window that has been left open to the warm night air, and it spills out into the street in the way that music from a private source always spills into public space, with a slight quality of intrusion, of offering something not intended for general consumption that nevertheless enriches the general atmosphere with its presence, a gift given without being given, received without being asked for. You slow down and listen. The music is not any piece you recognize. It might be something original, something the player is composing as they go, or it might be a piece you simply don't know, a fragment of a song, popular in this city in this era that your own time has not preserved. It is in a minor key, or hovering at the edge of one. Not sad exactly, but carrying the kind of emotional complexity that minor keys carry. The sense that happiness and sorrow are not opposites, but companions. That the same experience can hold both simultaneously without contradiction. That a thing can be resolved and still aching, completed and still mourning what the completion cost. The music says all of this. You hear all of this in it, or you put all of this into it, or both, which is how music works, how it has always worked. The music offering something, and the listener completing it with everything they bring, and the result belonging equally to both. You stand in the street under the open window and let the music come down to you for a while. Above you, someone is sitting at a piano in the lamplight, playing in the private hours, making music out of whatever this night has given them to work with. Below them, you are standing in the street with your face turned up toward the sound, receiving it. And between you, in the warm April air between the street and the open window, the music travels, invisible, weightless, and as real as anything in this city tonight. This is also history. Not the history that gets recorded, not the history that ends up in the scrolls and the textbooks and the commemorative speeches, but the history that actually happened, the specific and unrepeatable texture of a night in a city on the edge of something, the texture that is made of sounds from open windows and women sweeping stoops and men talking under gas lamps and prayer in empty churches and the grass growing on the grounds of the executive mansion and the Potomac moving through its banks in the dark. This is the real material, and you are inside it. The piano continues as you walk on, fading behind you gradually, the specific notes becoming less distinct, and then the music itself becoming less distinct, and then the fact of music becoming just a warmth in the air behind you that you carry with you as you continue. The street bends, and you follow it, and new streets open in front of you, and the city keeps offering itself in its night version, its honest version, its "this is what we actually are" version. And you keep walking through it with the open attention of someone who has decided that receiving what is offered is enough of a purpose for tonight, that no specific destination is required, that the walking and the noticing and the breathing and the being here are sufficient, are in fact exactly what this night requires. There is something you need to understand about April 14th, 1865, something that is essential to the full emotional experience of this night, something that makes the particular quality of Washington's air tonight make sense in a way that it wouldn't otherwise. This city has been living with Lincoln's death for years. Not literally. Lincoln is alive, moving through the rooms of the executive mansion at this very moment, going about the end of his evening in whatever way the end of his evening is going, but symbolically, emotionally, in the dreaming life of a city that has been watching a man consume himself in service to something larger than himself and has known, in the way that people who love someone always know before they are told, that the consumption is not sustainable. Washington has been frightened for Lincoln for a long time. The threats are not new. The letters have been arriving since before he took office. The warnings have come from every direction. The intelligence services have uncovered plots and foiled attempts and documented the quantity and quality of hatred directed at the man in the executive mansion in numbers that would make the air thin around anyone required to breathe them. And Lincoln knows. He knows. And he continues. He carries this knowledge the way he carries everything, with the particular resigned, melancholy, entirely unsentimental courage of a man who has decided that what is required of him is more important than his own survival, and that this decision, having been made, does not need to be made again every time the evidence of it presents itself. Tonight, none of that is on the surface of things. Tonight, the city is not in the mode of fear. It is in the mode of exhausted, complicated relief. And that relief is the dominant note of every conversation you have half heard and every face you have half seen in this long walk through the gaslit streets. But underneath the relief, if you listen for it, if you let your attention go deeper than the surface sound of a city winding down for the night, you can hear something else. A quality of holding, of people holding something they are not quite ready to let go of yet. Not because they want to hold it, but because they have been holding it for so long that they do not yet trust the world that would exist if they released it. The specific, exhausting, entirely understandable clinging of people who have been in a crisis long enough that crisis has become familiar, and peace, however desperately wanted, has the quality of something foreign, something that the body has not yet learned to live inside, something the nervous system does not yet know how to register as safe. You understand this feeling, not from Washington, not from 1865, not from anything in the history books. You understand it from your own life, from whatever period of sustained difficulty or sustained stress or sustained uncertainty you have lived through that went on long enough to become the new normal, that went on long enough that the person you were before it started feels like a different person, and the person you are on the other side of it, if you have reached the other side, if the other side has arrived, feels uncertain in a way that the difficulty itself, paradoxically, did not. The difficulty was known. The difficulty was navigated. You knew what the difficulty required of you. Peace requires something different and newer and less practiced. And the newness of it, the not yet knowingness of it, is its own kind of unease. That is Washington tonight. That is every person in every window and every doorway and every lamplit conversation on every corner of this city tonight. They are learning, or trying to learn, or simply beginning the long process of beginning to try to learn what peace requires. They do not yet know what it requires, but they are here on this warm April night with the gas lamps burning and the Potomac moving through its banks and the spring coming up through the dark earth, and they are beginning. Beginning is enough. Beginning is always enough. You have arrived at a quieter part of the city now, a residential block where the houses are slightly closer together and the trees that line the street are beginning to show their spring leaves. The new growth is slightly brighter, more yellow-green than the mature leaf of summer, the specific color of things that are young and fresh and have not yet been darkened by full exposure to the light. In the gas lamp's circle, these young leaves glow with a quality of their own light, as if the green itself is generating illumination, as if the specific chemical process of a leaf in spring is visible as a quality of presence rather than just as a color. You stop and look at them for a moment, these leaves in the lamplight, and you feel something that is too simple and too direct to be called anything complicated. You feel glad that they exist. You feel glad that spring comes regardless. You feel glad that the green of new leaves is exactly this color and no other color, and that this color has been exactly this color in the lamplight of every spring that has ever happened in this city, and will be this color in every spring that is still to come. The permanence of the impermanent, the reliability of the returning. The leaves come back. They always come back. A carriage passes at the end of the block, its wheels on the cobblestones, a sound that is both ordinary and somewhat musical, the irregular rhythm of iron on stone that you have been hearing at intervals all night, the background percussion of a city that still moves on horseback and wheel, that has not yet been transformed by the internal combustion engine, that exists in the last era of animal-powered transportation, an era that is almost over without knowing it is almost over, an era that will look, from the perspective of the century that follows it, like something antique and picturesque and irretrievably gone. The carriage passes and its sound fades down the street, and the quiet closes back in behind it, and you are left with the gas lamp and the young leaves and the April air and the particular quality of Washington's nighttime silence, which is not the silence of a place that has gone to sleep, but the silence of a place that is awake and present and choosing, for this hour at least, to be quiet in its wakefulness. There is a bench at the edge of a small park, not a formal park, just a corner lot that the city has allowed to remain unbuilt, to stay green and rough and somewhat wild in the middle of the surrounding brick and stone. The kind of space that appears in cities when they grow faster than they're planning. An accidental park rather than an intended one, but valued no less for its accidental quality, perhaps more. The way accidental things are sometimes more beautiful and more necessary than the things that were deliberately designed. You sit on the bench. Your body is grateful for this, grateful in the specific, unceremonious way that bodies are grateful for rest, not emotionally, not with any performance, but simply by settling into the sitting with more completeness than sitting usually achieves, by releasing weight into the wood of the bench with the particular totality of a body that has been walking and attending and carrying the night's impressions for a long time and is ready now to simply be still. Let yourself be still here for a while. There is no requirement to move. There is nowhere specific you need to be in this story at this particular moment. The story will find you when the story is ready to move again. And in the meantime, you are here, on this bench, in this small accidental park, in this city on this night, and the gas lamps burn at the street's edge, and the young leaves move in the April wind, and the carriage sound has long since faded, and what remains is the sound of a city breathing at night, which is one of the most reliable and most comforting sounds that exists for anyone who has ever been carried by it. The city breathes. You breathe. The night holds both of you with the same large and impersonal and entirely adequate care. Rest into it. Let it hold you. There's more of this night left to move through. But there is time. There is always time in the night for what the night needs to do. Close your eyes for a moment if they want to close. The bench is solid beneath you. The park is quiet around you. Washington breathes on every side, and the story will still be here when you are ready for it, exactly where you left it, patient as the night itself, as patient as the spring returning to the leaves of the trees that line this quiet street in a city that is moving slowly and imperfectly and with enormous courage toward whatever morning brings. You open your eyes. The park is still there. The gas lamps are still burning. The April wind is still moving through the young leaves with the same soft, continuous sound of things that are alive and growing. And you feel, in a way that is difficult to describe precisely, but that you know in the body rather than in the mind, that something has shifted in you while you are sitting here. Not dramatically, not a transformation, not a revelation, not any of the large and obvious changes that the mind tends to remember and categorize. Something smaller and more permanent than that. Something that settled. Something that found its place. The specific, quiet shift that happens in a person when they have been held by something larger than themselves, long enough to actually receive the holding, to actually let it in, rather than being present near it, while privately maintaining the distance that anxiety requires. The night held you, and you let it, and something settled, and you are right now in this small accidental park in this gaslit city on this warm April evening, exactly as okay as you need to be. Get up. Not urgently, not with any effort that the situation doesn't require. Simply let the body find its way back to standing the way the body always finds its way, and continue. There's a family you are about to visit, a house you are going to step inside, a particular collection of human beings living their particular human lives on the particular night before the particular morning that will change everything. They are waiting for you, though they don't know it, the way all the small and ordinary and irreplaceable moments of a night like this one are waiting for the person who has chosen to walk through them with full attention, to receive them rather than just to pass through them. You are that person tonight. You have been that person all along, and the city has more to show you before the night is done. Before we continue, take a breath. Not because you need to be reminded to breathe. Your body has been doing that without your help all along, faithfully and without complaint. The most reliable thing about you on any given night. But because a deliberate breath is a kind of choice, a small act of intention that says, I am here, I am present, I am choosing this, rather than simply being carried by it. In through your nose, slowly, the bottom of your lungs filling first, and then the middle, and then the top. A full and unhurried breath that treats the air as the gift it actually is. And then out through your mouth, completely, easily, the body releasing what it took in with the same generosity that it received it. One more. Because one is never quite enough, and the second breath always opens something the first breath only approached. In slowly, out completely. Good. Now let your shoulders drop wherever they can still drop. Let your hands rest. Let your jaw release the last of whatever it has been keeping for the day. The day is done. The night is yours. Washington is waiting. Let us go back. You left the small accidental park with its bench and its young spring leaves catching the gas lamp light, and you are walking again through the residential streets of the city, and the night is moving with you the way good companions move. Not pushing, not pulling, simply present beside you, matching your pace, making the walk feel less like traveling through something and more like being inside something. The way you feel inside music when the music is working, when it has stopped being something you are listening to and become something you are in. That is the quality of the night now, in this later hour, in this deeper part of the April dark. You are not watching Washington from outside it. You are inside it. You are part of its breathing. Your footsteps on the old stone and brick of the street are part of its sound. Your presence here, moving through it with attention and with care, is part of the fabric of this night, woven into it as genuinely as the gas lamps and the piano music and the woman and her broom and the prayer in the empty church. You belong to this night, and this night belongs to you. The house you are approaching is on a block you have not yet been on, a block of brick row houses that stand in a continuous terrace on both sides of the street, their facades uniform in the specific way of working-class housing built at scale. The same door, the same windows, the same roofline repeated with only the smallest variations across the entire block, the kind of repetition that might seem monotonous from the outside, but which contains, behind each identical facade, a completely different world, a completely different collection of people and histories and tonight-specific anxieties and tonight-specific comforts. You stop at the house in the middle of the block on the left side. There is no reason to choose this house over any other except that the light in its front window has a quality that draws you, a warmth that is slightly different from the warmth of the other lit windows on the block, a warmth that has in it a quality of gathering, of people choosing to be in the same room rather than the separate rooms that the night might otherwise send them to. You approach the door, which is standing open because the night is warm enough to leave doors open, and because the people inside have not yet thought about closing it, have not yet made the transition from the evening's easy openness to the closed-inness of actual sleep. And you step through the doorway into the hallway of a house that smells of cooked food and wood smoke, and the specific domestic smell of people who have been living in the same space together for long enough that their combined presence has become the smell of the house itself, inseparable from it, as much a part of the structure as the plaster walls and the wooden floors. The floors creak very slightly under your feet. Old wood, well-used wood, the kind of floor that has been walked on by the same feet and different feet for many years, and knows the weight of each person who regularly crosses it and notices when a new weight arrives. The family is in the parlor. You see them through the open doorway at the end of the hall. 3 of them, which feels like both too many and too few, the way family groupings often feel when you catch them in an unguarded moment and understand in a glance something about their structure and their gaps. A woman of perhaps 40 sits in the chair nearest the window, with sewing in her hands that she is not currently sewing, the needle held still, and the fabric resting in her lap with the specific positioned neglect of something that was picked up as a way of having something to hold and has since been forgotten, in favor of the more demanding work of simply sitting with the evening. Across from her, on a low settee that has seen better decades, a young man of perhaps 19 sits with his legs extended and his arms folded and his head leaned back against the settee's back, staring at the ceiling with the specific quality of attention of someone who is looking at something that the ceiling does not contain, but that exists somewhere beyond it, somewhere in the interior distance that is visible from the ceiling only if you are the person who needs to look at it. And in the corner, on the rug that covers the parlor floor, a child of perhaps 7 is sleeping, not in a bed, not tucked away in the appropriate place for sleeping children, but here, in the parlor, on the rug, curled on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek, and her breathing, the slow and total breathing of a child who has simply fallen asleep in the middle of the evening without asking permission or making any formal arrangements about it. The way children sleep when the adults around them have not yet sent them to bed and their bodies have simply made the decision independently. You stand in the doorway of the parlor and look at these 3 people, and you feel something that is one of the specific emotions of this kind of night, an emotion that does not have a precise name in any language you know, but that is something like tender grief, or grieving tenderness, or the feeling of loving something while being aware that loving it is also the most vulnerable thing about you. That the thing you love is also the place where the world can reach you most completely. The woman with the still needle, the young man with his eyes on the ceiling, the sleeping child on the rug. A family sitting in a room together at night because the room is where they are, because the night is where they are, because the city and the war and the long years of uncertainty have arranged them here in this particular configuration on this particular evening, and they are making of it what they can, which is this: presence. Simply being in the same room, simply breathing the same air, simply occupying the same space at the same time, which is the most basic and most unrepeatable form of connection that exists between human beings, and which, when it is gone, when the configuration that produced it has been changed by time, or by circumstance, or by any of the other forces that change configurations without asking permission, is the thing that people miss most, the thing they would give almost anything to have back. Even for an evening, even for an hour, even just to sit in the same room and breathe the same air one more time. The woman speaks, not looking up from the fabric in her lap, speaking with the tone of someone continuing a conversation that was interrupted some time ago and is being resumed without ceremony because it was never really finished. Because it is the kind of conversation that does not finish. I keep thinking about what comes after. Not next week, not next month, but the long after. What this country looks like when it has had time to grow back into itself. What we will have made of all of this. The young man on the settee lowers his eyes from the ceiling and looks at his mother for a moment before answering. And in that moment of looking, you see something in his face that is the specific emotional signature of a young person who has grown up faster than growing up is meant to happen, who has been brought to adulthood by circumstances rather than by time, who carries in their face both the youth that is still biologically there and the age that experience has written over it. He is 19, or close to it, and he looks both younger and older than 19 simultaneously, which is one of the specific faces that war produces in the people close enough to feel it without being fully consumed by it. He says, "I think it looks like her." He gestures toward the sleeping child on the rug, and the gesture is not sentimental, not performed, just direct and honest, the gesture of someone pointing at the thing they actually mean, rather than reaching for a more impressive way to say it. I think what comes after looks like people who didn't fight in it, having to figure out what it meant. And I think that's right. I think that's how it should be. The ones who are left should get to decide what it was for. The woman looks at the child on the rug then, and her face does something that faces do when they are looking at something they love more than they love their own survival, something they would absorb all the difficulty of the world on behalf of, if absorption were possible, something whose existence makes the entire weight of the preceding years feel somehow proportionate, not worth it. Nothing is worth what the war cost. No one in this room would say otherwise, but proportionate in the sense that the sleeping child and the nation she will inherit and the question of what that nation will become are all things large enough to have justified the enormous, terrible, ongoing effort of trying to answer them correctly. She looks at the child and she holds the still needle and the still fabric and she breathes. She says, very quietly, "I want her to grow up in something worth growing up in. That is all I have ever wanted. Everything else is details. You stay in the doorway of the parlor for a while, and you let these people be what they are, which is ordinary and irreplaceable and entirely human and entirely present on this particular night in this particular room. You do not announce yourself. You do not interrupt. You are simply here in the way that a witness is here, not participating, not affecting, but present for, which is its own form of care, its own form of responsibility. Witnessing something matters. The act of paying genuine attention to an ordinary moment matters. It changes the moment, or rather it honors the moment, lifts it slightly out of the stream of passing time and holds it up in the light of consciousness for long enough that it can be fully seen, fully felt, fully received. You are receiving this family tonight. You are holding them in your attention the way the night holds them in its dark, which is without judgment and without requirement, and with the specific, generous patience of something that does not need anything in return. The child on the rug shifts slightly in her sleep, a small adjustment, a minor repositioning that her dreaming body has decided is necessary, and then settles back into the specific stillness of deep child sleep. That utter, total, completely unconflicted sleep that adults spend their whole lives trying to return to and cannot quite reach. The sleep of a body that does not yet know what it has to worry about and has therefore decided, at least for tonight, not to worry about anything. Her breathing is slow and visible, her small chest rising and falling with the reliable rhythm of something that does not need to be managed, something that simply happens because it happens, because the body knows what to do in the night and does it without asking permission. You watch her breathe for a moment, and you feel your own breathing synchronize with hers, which is one of the things that happens when you watch someone breathe with real attention. The body copies, the rhythm migrates. You find yourself in the same cadence as the sleeping child on the rug, slow and deep and entirely, unconflictedly present in the act of breathing. Let your breathing be like hers. Let it be that slow and that complete and that free from the management and the monitoring that adult breathing usually requires. You do not need to check your breathing right now. You do not need to evaluate whether it is deep enough or slow enough or in any sense sufficient. It is sufficient. It has always been sufficient. Let it be what it is, and let it do what it does, and rest in the knowledge that the most fundamental thing your body knows how to do is still working perfectly, still doing its work, still carrying you through the night with the same faithful, uncomplaining, completely reliable care that it has carried you through every night you have ever had. You leave the family in their parlor, the woman and her still natal, the young man and his honest answer, the child in her perfect sleep, and you step back into the hallway and through the front door and back into the street, and the night air receives you with the warmth and the Potomac smell and the gas lamp light that has been your companion all evening. And you stand for a moment on the brick sidewalk in front of the house, and you breathe the night air and feel the specific, real warmth of having been somewhere true. And then you continue. The city has grown quieter than it was even an hour ago. Not silent. Washington at night is never entirely silent. There is always the carriage somewhere, always the distant voice, always the water in the drainage channels and the wind in the trees, and the accumulated sound of a city that never fully stops, that keeps its own counsel through the small hours with the specific, low-level activity of an organism maintaining itself between the busier periods of its daily cycle, but quieter. The conversations that were happening in doorways and under gas lamps have mostly concluded. The people who were out in the evening warmth, having made their way, finally, inside and toward whatever version of rest the night offers them. The streets have that quality of settled emptiness that they reach only in the deepest hours. The emptiness that is not absence, but completion. The emptiness of a space that has finished its public function for the day and is now existing in its own right, for its own reasons, as a street rather than as a thing that streets do. You find yourself drawn without specific intention toward the part of the city where the military is most present, where the war's physical reality is most immediately legible in the architecture and the signage and the particular quality of the men you pass. Even at this hour, even in these quieter days following Appomattox, there are soldiers everywhere in Washington, men in uniform, moving through the city with the slightly different bearing of people whose relationship to space and to authority has been changed by the specific training and the specific experience of military service. People who stand differently and walk differently and occupy their immediate environment with a slightly different quality of awareness than civilians do. You pass a man sitting on the steps of a government building, his uniform jacket open at the collar, his cap set beside him on the step, his posture the posture of someone who is allowing himself a degree of informality that the uniform does not usually permit, and who is finding this allowance both comfortable and slightly strange, like a person who has been formal for so long that informality feels like a borrowed garment that doesn't quite fit. He is writing a letter. You can see from the angle and the size of the paper, a real letter on real paper with an ink pen that he holds, with the careful grip of someone who does not write frequently and treats the act of writing with a degree of respect proportional to its infrequency. He writes slowly, choosing his words with visible deliberation, pausing between sentences to look up at the gas lamp across the street as if the lamp might offer the next sentence if consulted, then returning to the paper and writing again. The letter is going somewhere, to someone specific, someone who has been waiting for it, someone for whom the arrival of this particular piece of paper will be an event rather than an ordinary occurrence, something that will be held and reread and preserved in a drawer or a box or the kind of place where people keep the things they cannot afford to lose. He is writing toward someone who loves him. You can feel this in the way he holds the paper, the way he keeps his handwriting careful and legible in a way that goes slightly beyond what mere communication requires. The extra care of someone presenting themselves in the only way currently available through the specific quality of the marks they make on a page. He pauses in his writing and looks up at the street and speaks, not to you exactly, but not away from you either, speaking in the particular direction of someone who is present in the vicinity and is therefore in the general region of where one speaks when one needs to say something. The hardest part of all of this, he says, slowly, as if the thought is forming as the words do, rather than the words following a thought already formed, is figuring out how to go back to being a person who is not at war. I have been at war for so long that I have forgotten the specific feeling of being at peace, not the idea of it. I remember the idea of it very well, but the actual feeling, what peace feels like in the body, I have forgotten that. He looks back down at his letter. He writes another sentence, then another, and the care he takes is the care of someone trying to give something real to someone far away, trying to compress warmth and reassurance, and the specific, irreducible reality of his own continued existence into marks on paper, and send it across whatever distance separates them in the hope that it arrives as something more than ink. You watch him for a moment, and you feel the full weight of what he said, which is not just his thing, but everyone's thing, which is not just a soldier's thing, but a human thing, the forgetting of peace. The way difficulty, when it goes on long enough, stops being the exception and becomes the baseline, becomes the thing the nervous system is calibrated for, so that when the difficulty lifts, the absence of it feels wrong somehow, feels like a trick, feels less like relief than like a new and differently shaped uncertainty. You know this feeling from somewhere in your own life, from some period of sustained difficulty that you have lived through or are still living through. You know the feeling of having forgotten what peace feels like in the body. You know it, and knowing it, you feel toward this man on the steps, with the open collar and the careful letter, a recognition that crosses every distance of time and circumstance and lands clean and direct. I understand what you just said. I understand it completely. You do not say this to him. There is no need to say it. The understanding exists whether it is spoken or not, and the night, which has been full of unspoken understandings, full of things known between people without the mediation of words, receives this one as it has received all the others, quietly, completely, without requiring it to be performed. You move on. The street continues. The night continues. The soldier continues his letter, his pen moving slowly and carefully toward the person who is waiting for it somewhere. The city is at its quietest now. You feel this as a quality of the air, rather than as the absence of any specific sound. The way you feel the approach of a storm as a quality of the air, rather than as the arrival of any specific weather. The quietest point of the night is not silence. It is something more subtle than silence. Something that is itself a presence rather than an absence. It is the point at which all the competing sounds of the city have reduced themselves to their lowest common denominators. When the occasional carriage and the occasional voice and the water in the channels and the wind in the trees and the gas lamps and the breathing of sleeping people behind closed windows are all present simultaneously, but at such low intensities that they blend into something that is more like atmosphere than like sound, more like the medium the night exists in than like anything happening within it. This is the deepest hour, the hour before dawn, the hour when the night is most completely itself, when it has become the fullest version of what it set out to be, when everything that was in it has found its final resting place in the dark, and the city and the turning earth beneath the city are all together, as still as they are going to be until the morning arrives and begins its work of undoing the stillness. Something moves in you in this quiet, something that has been waiting all night for the noise to reduce far enough to be heard, something that exists in a register below the ordinary business of attention, and that requires precisely this quality of quiet to become perceptible. It is not a thought. It is not an emotion exactly, or not only an emotion. It is something more foundational than either, something that the body knows and that the quiet allows to rise into awareness without the usual static of the busy mind getting in the way. It is the feeling of being alive, not the concept of being alive, not the intellectual awareness of it, but the actual felt sense of it, the specific, immediate, irreducible sensation of existing right now in this body on this night, breathing this air, feeling this ground beneath your feet, being a living creature in a living world on a night that is alive with its own specific and unrepeatable character. The feeling of being alive, when it arrives in this form, not as a concept but as a sensation, is one of the most extraordinary things the human body is capable of generating, and it arrives almost exclusively in moments of genuine quiet, in the moments when the noise is reduced far enough to let the most basic signal through. You are feeling it now, right now, in this quiet street, in this gaslit city on this warm April night. You are alive, and you can feel that you are alive. And the feeling is not complicated, and not burdened, and not wrapped in anything else. It is just the feeling itself. Let it be there. Let it be exactly what it is. You have been drawn again, without quite deciding to move in this direction, toward the area around the theater district, toward the blocks where Washington's entertainment establishments are located, where the city's population comes in the evening hours for the specific form of relief that only certain kinds of pleasure can provide. The pleasure of losing yourself in someone else's story, of sitting in a darkened room and watching human beings enact something larger than ordinary life on a lit stage, of receiving, through the specific medium of performance, something about the human condition that ordinary life does not have the time or the structure to deliver directly. Ford's Theater is on 10th Street. You are not going to Ford's Theater specifically. It is not the theater that matters tonight. It is the night that matters. It is the quality of the city on this specific night that you are here to receive. But you are in its vicinity, in the streets that surround it. And you feel its presence the way you feel the presence of any place that is about to become significant. A slight heaviness in the air, a faint suggestion of weight that has not yet become the weight itself, but is already gathering. The theater is dark from the outside. The evening's performance is long over. The last audience has gone home. The actors have removed their makeup and their costumes and made their way out into the night, toward their own beds and their own private hours. The stagehands have done whatever stagehands do after a performance, and the building stands now in the block as buildings stand when they are not in use, as structures rather than as places, waiting with the patient, unconscious, entirely unliterary patience of brick and wood and glass for the next occasion to be something more than a structure. Tomorrow it will be something more than a structure. Tomorrow it will be the location of something that 150 years of subsequent history will not be able to stop talking about. Something that people will still be visiting and still thinking about and still trying to understand long after almost everything else about 1865 has faded into the textbook gray of remote history. But tonight it is just a building on 10th Street with its lights out and its doors locked and its stage empty and its seats waiting in the dark. You stand across the street from it for a moment and look at it with the specific quality of attention that you bring to places that are about to become something they do not yet know they are about to become. There is nothing to see. The facade is brick, straightforward federal architecture of the period. 3 wide arched doorways at street level, windows above. Nothing that distinguishes it from the other commercial buildings on the street except the slight suggestion of grandeur in its proportions, the slightly theatrical quality of its arched openings, the sense that it was designed to be noticed, to be arrived at, to be the destination rather than the passage. It does not know what it is about to become. It is just a building. You look at it for a moment longer and then you turn away and you walk in the other direction because there is nothing more to receive from a building that has not yet done the thing it will be remembered for. And the night has other things to offer that are more important and more honest and more alive than the unlit facade of a place in its last hours of innocence. What the night has to offer now is this: the quality of the air at the hour before dawn, the specific transformation that happens to a city's atmosphere in the window between the deepest quiet of the small hours and the first tentative approach of morning light. The transformation that is so gradual and so complete and so unlike any other atmospheric shift that it deserves its own name and does not quite have one. You feel it beginning now, not as a change in temperature, though the air is slightly cooler than it was at the height of the evening, cool enough to be felt on the face without being cold. The specific spring night cool that is pleasant rather than uncomfortable. The cool of air that carries within it the memory of the day's warmth and the promise of tomorrow's. Not as a change in sound, though the sounds of the city have reduced themselves to their smallest and most intermittent, as a change in quality, in texture, in the specific way the air moves around you and through you and fills the spaces between things with a particular density that it achieves in this hour and no other. The air before dawn is its own substance. It is the same molecules as the air of midnight, the same oxygen and nitrogen and trace elements, but arranged by the night into something that feels meaningfully different, something that the body reads as transitional, as in between, as poised at the edge of a change that is still some minutes or some tens of minutes away, but that is already present in the air as potential, the way a sound is present in the instrument before the player plays it. You have found your way to the edge of the city, or the edge of the settled part of it, where the brick and stone of the built environment gives way to something less finished, less certain, more open to the sky. There are fields here, or the beginning of fields, the kind of open ground that exists at the margins of a growing city, not yet absorbed and built upon, but aware of the city's proximity, changed by it, the specific semi-wild, semi-urban landscape of a place that is in the process of becoming something other than what it currently is. The grass here is the same new growth spring grass as the grass on the grounds of the executive mansion, the same yellow-green color, the same alive quality of things that have recently emerged from the winter ground and have not yet had time to become anything other than what they are at this precise moment in their growing. You walk through this grass and feel it against your feet and smell it. The specific smell of spring grass at night, which is one of the cleanest smells the world produces, one of the most uncomplicated and most welcome. The smell of green and earth and water and the particular chemical business of photosynthesis and growth. The smell of the world making itself rather than being made. You stop in the middle of this open ground and you turn in a slow circle and you look at Washington from the outside. The city is visible as a collection of lights, gas lamps in their rows along the streets, the lit windows of buildings where people are awake, the larger light of the commercial and government areas where the street lighting is denser, all of it spread across the dark landscape in a pattern that is both entirely human and entirely beautiful. The specific beauty of light and darkness that belongs equally to a campfire on a hillside and to the lit windows of the largest city in North America. The beauty that has nothing to do with scale and everything to do with the fundamental contrast of warm light against cold dark, of human presence against the vastness of the surrounding night. You look at the city. You let it be what it is, small against the sky, large against the ground, warm and fragile and persistent and doing its best. The sky to the east is changing. It has been changing for some time now in the way that the sky changes before dawn, imperceptibly and then undeniably, the black giving way to the deepest blue, the deepest blue giving way to something slightly less deep, the gradations too fine to track in any specific moment, but unmistakable in their accumulated effect. The stars in that portion of the sky are the first to yield, the dimmest ones becoming less visible against a background that is no longer the absolute dark it was an hour ago, the brightest ones holding on for a while longer before they too begin to be outcompeted by the approaching light. You watch this happen, and you feel in it what the Romans felt, and what the Byzantines felt, and what every human being who has ever been awake at this hour feels when the sky begins its transformation. The specific, wordless, entirely physical relief of the morning arriving. Not relief from the night, because the night has been good tonight. The night has been a companion and a guide and a holder of important things. But the relief of continuity, the relief of the world confirming one more time that it is going to keep going, that the rotation continues, that the sun is coming, that tomorrow, which has been tomorrow all night, is about to become today. A bird calls from somewhere in the open ground behind you, a single, clear, questioning call, the kind that is less a song than an announcement. The bird's way of checking whether the morning is really beginning, of sending a signal into the pre-dawn air, and waiting to see what comes back. What comes back is silence, and then another bird somewhere further away answering, and then a third, and then gradually the quality of sound in the open ground and in the trees at its edges begins to change. The silence of the deep night giving way incrementally to the sound of creatures who have been waiting for exactly this quality of sky, who have spent the dark hours in whatever stillness birds spend the dark hours in, and who are now, as the east brightens through its smallest and most gradual increments, waking into the morning with the specific confidence of things that have done this every day of their lives and trust completely that it is happening again, that the light is real, that the day is coming. Let the birds be there. Let their sound join the quality of the air and the quality of the light and the quality of the open ground beneath your feet, and let all of it tell you what it is telling the birds. The morning is coming. The night has done its work. Something is completing, not ending. Completion is different from ending. Completion is the full arrival at the thing that was being moved toward, the satisfaction of a process that has reached its destination rather than simply stopped. The night has reached its destination. And its destination, as it turns out, is this. You, here, in this open ground at the edge of Washington, breathing the first breath of air that is more morning than night, feeling the first barely perceptible warmth of a sun that has not yet risen, but is already sending its advance notice across the dark landscape of the eastern horizon. There is one more walk to take, the last walk of the night, through the city that has been your companion for these hours, through the streets that have carried you and shown you their people and their lights and their conversations and their private griefs and their private graces. You turn back toward the city and you begin to walk through it for the last time. And you walk it differently from how you walked it in the earlier hours. Not the alert, gathering attention of someone who is arriving somewhere new and needs to understand where they are, but the softer, more receptive attention of someone who is moving through something they have come to know, something that has become, over the course of a long night's walking, a kind of home. The streets receive you. The gas lamps are lower now, their fuel reduced by the hours of the night, their flames smaller and more amber, in some places guttering slightly as they approach the end of what they have to burn. The light they cast more intimate and more close held than the full burning light of the earlier hours. Some have gone out entirely, leaving dark stretch that the pre-dawn sky above is just barely beginning to fill with its own first faint gray-blue light. Not enough yet to see by clearly, but enough to know that the absolute dark is over, that the world is beginning to show itself again after the long hours of its most complete concealment. You walk through these alternating islands of lamplight and gray pre-dawn, and the rhythm of it is different from the rhythm of earlier. The dark patches are less dark now. The light patches are less dramatically lit. The whole quality of illumination softer and more diffuse, as if the city and the sky are negotiating the transition between night and day, rather than one of them simply giving way to the other. You pass the parlor window of the house with the family inside it, and you look in as you pass, and the lamp is still burning, but the young man on the settee is asleep now, his head tilted to one side against the settee's back, his face completely relaxed in sleep, the age written there by the war years smoothed away by rest, so that what you see is simply a young man's face, the face he had before the war, and still has underneath everything the war has added, still there, still young, still his own. The woman is not in the chair. She has gone to bed, or perhaps she is in the other room. Perhaps she has carried the sleeping child from the rug to wherever the child actually sleeps and has gone to her own rest, while the lamp burns itself toward morning. The lamp burns on the table. The sleeping young man breathes beside it. The room is quiet and warm and complete. You pass the steps of the government building where the soldier was writing his letter, and the steps are empty now, the soldier gone. The letter finished and folded and addressed and placed wherever he will carry it until he can post it. The step he occupied already reverting to its ordinary status as a step, as a surface that people cross rather than rest on, as a part of the building's approach rather than a place in itself. But the air around the step has a quality that air sometimes has around places where something real just happened. A faint suggestion of warmth, or of presence, or of recently was the ghost of a person being where they were for the time. they were there, and then being gone. You feel it as you pass, and you carry it with you, the way you carry all the small and specific presences of this night, not as memories exactly, not as data you are storing for future reference, but as the substance of an experience that is already woven into you, already part of the fabric of what tonight has been. You passed the church where the single voice was praying, and the church is silent now, or appears to be silent, the voice gone, or reduced below the threshold of audibility. The building, once again, simply a building, its stones holding the warmth of the day and the cold of the night, in the way that stones hold everything, patiently and without preference, and the small light in the window above the door that tells you someone may still be inside, or that a lamp was left burning, or that the eternal light of a certain kind of faith burns regardless of whether anyone is there to see it, or all three simultaneously, which is the most honest answer. And you pass the small accidental park with its bench and its young leaves, and you stop here one more time, as you stopped before, because this is the right place to stop, because the bench is there, and the spring leaves are catching the first gray-blue light of the pre-dawn sky now rather than the amber of the gas lamps. And the quality of the light on the leaves is different and equally beautiful, the beauty of the same thing in different light, the beauty of how the world is always showing you the same thing through different filters, and the showing is always worth receiving. You sit on the bench again, and the wood is cool now, cooler than it was before, the warmth of the April evening having given way to the coolness of the pre-dawn. And you sit in this coolness, and you breathe the morning air, and you look at the young leaves, and you let everything go quiet. Washington is around you, breathing in the early morning, and in a few hours it will wake into the specific morning of April 15th, 1865, and learn what the night concealed. The news will move through the city quickly and then slowly, the way news of the truly enormous kind always moves, arriving fast as a shock, and then spreading slow as comprehension, the initial information preceding real understanding by hours or days or years, or in some cases forever. The city will grieve. It will be confused and frightened and angry and lost, and then it will do what cities always do, what people always do, what life always does. It will keep going, not unchanged, changed completely, but going. The city will keep going, and the nation will keep going, and the spring will keep coming up through the dark earth in the way that spring always comes, indifferent to the specific dramas of the human beings who live in its vicinity, simply doing what it does, returning to a world that has been waiting for it with the patient, unstoppable, entirely impersonal confidence of something that has been doing this for longer than anything else on earth. History does not begin loudly. You have known this all night, felt it in every quiet corner of the city, in every ordinary moment of every ordinary person living their ordinary life on this extraordinary night. It does not announce itself. It does not wear its significance on the outside, where you can see it and prepare for it and arrange your face appropriately. It begins exactly like this, like a family in a parlor with a still needle, and a young man and a sleeping child on the rug, like a soldier on a step with a careful letter, like a woman sweeping at an unusual hour because sweeping is what she has, like a piano playing from an open window into the warm night because the person at the piano needed to make something, needed to give the night's feeling a form that could be heard. History begins in all of these places simultaneously, in the texture of the ordinary, in the accumulated weight of people being human together in time. And it is only afterward, only from the distance of the subsequent years, that the hinge becomes visible, that the night before becomes recognizable as the night before, that the ordinary is revealed to have been extraordinary all along, was always extraordinary, is always extraordinary, every night, in every city, in every era. This specific quality of ordinary human life continuing in the face of large and uncertain and often frightening circumstances is always the most extraordinary thing there is. Let your body sink further into the bench. Feel the wood beneath you, cool and solid and entirely reliable. A surface that has been doing what surfaces do for longer than you have been in this park tonight, that will keep doing it after you are gone, that supports weight without requiring the weight to be anything other than weight. Let your weight be weight. Let gravity have you completely, the way the bench is having you, the way the earth beneath the bench is having you, the way the whole enormous, patient planet is having you in every moment of your life, whether you notice it or not, holding you on its surface with the same impersonal, absolute, completely adequate care that it extends to every other thing on its surface, to the young leaves and the gas lamps and the Potomac and the white painted house with its lit windows and the sleeping child on the rug and the soldier with his letter and the piano and the woman and her broom and everything on this warm April night, everything held by the same enormous turning world. Your eyes are heavy. This is not something you need to resist or manage or evaluate. It is simply information. The body reporting what it knows, which is that the work of this night is done, that the walking is finished, that the receiving is complete, that everything this night had to offer has been offered, and everything you came here to find has been found. And what remains now is only this: the descent, the good descent, the one that every tired body moves toward eventually when it has been given enough time and enough quiet and enough of the specific material that rest requires, which is not the absence of everything, but the presence of the right things. And the right things are here tonight, have been here all night, and are here now in their most complete and most gentle form. The cool bench, and the spring leaves, and the pre-dawn air, and the quiet city, and the birds beginning in the trees at the edge of the open ground, and the sky doing its slow and patient work of becoming morning in the east. Washington is doing the same. It is doing what places do in the last minutes before the day begins, the settling into the final configuration of the night, the last exhale before the first inhale of morning, the specific and brief and beautiful stillness that exists at the boundary between sleep and waking, and that belongs equally to people and to cities and to every living thing that participates in the daily rhythm of dark and light. You are in that stillness now. It has been arriving for the last hour without you quite registering its arrival, coming up through the layers of the night, like the warmth of the earth coming up through the layers of soil in spring, slow and pervasive, and already complete. By the time you notice it, the stillness is here. The night has brought you to it. This is where the night was going all along. Let the city go soft, not away. Washington is still here. Will always be here in the sense that this night will always have been. This city will always have existed on this warm April evening, with its gas lamps and its families and its soldiers and its prayers and its piano music and its sleeping children and its tired and extraordinary man in the candlelit upper rooms of the white painted house. That cannot be undone. It is permanent in the way that everything that has actually happened is permanent, stored in the fabric of time the way a note is stored in a struck string, the vibration continuing long after the sound itself has faded below the threshold of human hearing. The night is permanent, and it is going soft. Let those two things coexist, the permanence of the night and the softening of your hold on it, the realness of Washington and the loosening of your focus on its details. Let the specific become general. Let the streets blur into the idea of streets. Let the lamps blur into the idea of warmth. Let the sounds blend into the single, continuous, gentle sound of a city breathing at the edge of morning, which is the most peaceful sound you know, which has been lulling people toward sleep in every city that has ever existed, for as long as cities have existed. The sound of life continuing, the sound of the world keeping itself going through the night, and into the day, and through the night again. Endless and reliable and completely adequate. Your breathing has slowed to something that is barely distinguishable from the breathing of sleep. The distinction between the two is narrowing, the gap between where you are and where you are going, reducing itself moment by moment to something that is less a gap than a membrane, less a distance to cross than a threshold to drift through, the kind of threshold that does not require stepping across, but simply receiving, simply being present at the edge of it for long enough that the edge dissolves and you find yourself on the other side of it, without having made any particular decision about crossing. Sleep is like this. Sleep is always like this for anyone who has been awake long enough and quiet enough and willing enough to receive it rather than force it. It arrives not as an event, but as a condition, the condition of being asleep, which is discovered rather than chosen, which finds you rather than the reverse, which is the reward of patience and attention and the willingness to be still in the dark, long enough for the dark to do what it does. The dark is doing what it does. Washington is doing what it does. The April night is completing itself in the way that the best nights complete themselves, not with a dramatic conclusion, not with any announcement of ending, but with a simple, quiet, gradual arrival at rest, The gas lamps are burning their last fuel in their glass lanterns. The birds in the trees are beginning their morning song, very soft, still, very tentative. The first careful notes of dawn chorus, rather than the full-throated declaration of a morning fully arrived. The sky in the east is no longer quite dark and not yet quite light, suspended in that improbable, beautiful, unrepeatable quality of pre-dawn blue that exists for 20 minutes and belongs to no other hour. And you are here in it, in the bench and the park and the city and the night and the approaching morning and the complete, total, earned quietness of a body that has been somewhere real and has returned from it with something that cannot be named, but that lives permanently now in the place where the most important things live, which is below language, below thought, below the busy surface of the conscious mind, in the body's oldest and most honest register, where only the real things go. Lincoln is sleeping in the upper rooms of the white-painted house. Whatever the night brought him, whatever thoughts circled, whatever heaviness settled, whatever small relief the approaching end of the war's worst violence provided against the much larger weight of everything the peace will require, he is sleeping now, in the specific, imperfect, entirely human way that people sleep when they are exhausted to their deepest level and can no longer maintain the wakefulness that the weight of their responsibilities demands. He is sleeping, and in a few hours he will wake, and he will not know that the night just past was the last night of his life that he woke from. He will wake into April 15th, and he will dress, and he will eat something or not eat something, and he will attend to the morning's business with the same extraordinary, ordinary, entirely unremarkable humanity that he brings to every morning, and the day will carry him forward, the way days carry everyone forward, toward whatever it contains, which he does not know and cannot know, and is therefore carrying no specific dread about, which is perhaps a mercy, or perhaps simply the condition that all of us share, and that we call, in its most basic form, being human and being alive in time. You are alive in time, right now. This moment, this breath, this specific configuration of you, lying where you are lying in the particular darkness of your own particular night, is the only time this exact version of you will exist. Tomorrow, you will be someone who went to Washington on this night, someone who walked those gaslit streets and stood outside that house and sat on that bench and received that family and that soldier and that prayer and that music, and you will carry all of that with you into tomorrow in the body's way of carrying things, which is quiet and permanent and entirely below the threshold of anything you will be able to identify deliberately, but present, reliably and completely present, doing its work of being what was experienced, doing its work of being part of you. The night is part of you now. Washington on this warm April evening is part of you now. The sleeping child and the careful letter and the still needle and the open window piano and the spring leaves and the lamp light are all part of you now. They went in while you were receiving them, the way the night air went in with every breath, quietly and pervasively and without any particular announcement. And they are in you, and they will be in you, and that is a good thing. That is exactly what a night like this is for. Let your eyes stay closed, or let them be whatever they are. It does not matter now, because seeing and not seeing are both routes to the same destination at this hour. Both paths toward the place the night has been carrying you. The place of rest that is so close now it is already present in your body, even before it has fully arrived. Your legs are heavy and warm. Your arms are heavy and warm. Your shoulders have given up whatever the last thing they were holding was. Quietly and without drama, sometime in the last few minutes without your registering the exact moment of giving up, your face is at rest. The muscles that move your face through the expressions of the day, all the managing and the composing and the responding and the performing of being a person in a world full of other people, those muscles are at rest. You are not performing anything right now. You are not composing anything. You are simply here, in your body, in the dark, at the end of a night that was worth being present for, at the edge of a sleep that is worth falling into completely. Fall into it. The city will hold what it holds without your watching it. The gas lamps will burn their last fuel and go dark on their own. The birds will complete their morning song, and the morning will arrive in the full and ordinary way that mornings arrive, bringing with it everything it brings, and the city will wake into it the way cities wake, not all at once, but gradually. One open window and one lit stove and one set of footsteps at a time. And history will do what history does, which is to proceed, which is to be the accumulated consequence of everything that came before it, which is to be the morning that follows the night that you just walked through. You were there. You were present for the night before the morning. You gave it your attention and your care and your willingness to receive it, and it gave you in return this, the specific, quiet, completely sufficient peace of a person who has been somewhere real and has come back from it rested in the way that only real places can rest you. Not the rest of having done nothing, the rest of having done something that mattered, the rest of having been genuinely present inside a night that deserved genuine presence. That rest is yours. It is the night's gift to you. Receive it. The April air is soft and warm, and smells of the Potomac and the spring and the city breathing at the edge of morning. The bench is cool and solid and entirely reliable. The leaves are the specific yellow-green of new spring growth, caught in the first gray light of a day that is beginning, whether or not anyone is awake to watch it begin. And you are here, on the bench in the small accidental park in the city that is about to wake into the morning that changes everything, and you are at rest, and the rest is complete, and the night that brought you here has finished its work and is releasing you gently and completely into the sleep that has been waiting at the end of every sentence of this story since the very first one. Patient as the Potomac, reliable as the spring, present as the warm April air on your face in the last moment, before you stop knowing what is on your face, in the last moment before you are somewhere else entirely, in the last moment before you are simply asleep. Sleep now. Washington is resting. Lincoln is resting. The sleeping child is still on the rug, or in the bed she was carried to, still dreaming her uncomplicated dreams. The soldier's letter is folded and waiting to be sent. The piano is silent. The church is quiet. The woman's broom is leaning against the wall beside the swept step. The gas lamps are burning their last small flames. The birds are singing the first song of a morning that does not know what it is about to become and is therefore, in these last minutes before it does, still simply a morning, still simply the next morning after the last night, still simply the sun coming up over the Appalachians and the light moving across the landscape from east to west, and the city of Washington standing at the edge of the Potomac in the early light, ordinary and irreplaceable and alive. Sleep. The night is done. The city is here. And you are exactly where you are supposed to be.